I'm here with Mr. Vinod Bhat, who is a co-founder of the company called JioSaavn, and also a founder of 21B Media. And he's also very closely associated with Akshaya Patra. So let's hear from him, Mr. Vinod. How are you associated with Akshaya Patra, and how closely are you associated with Akshaya Patra, and also how long have you been associated with Akshaya Patra?
Thank you for that introduction. So I've been associated with Akshaya Patra now for about 15 years. And I got a chance to visit a few of the kitchens in India over the years. I still haven't been to a school yet, but I plan to. I was introduced to the organization just through some common friends, and I didn't think anything of it. It was just kind of an introduction, and then the person invited me to an event that they were holding in New York City, and it was the speakers were Fareed Zakaria, Nitin Noria, Dean of Harvard Business School, and Desh Deshpande. And I'll never forget that event, because that's when it all started to really click for me. Nitin Noria shared a story where he said that his dad, grew up in India in the 1940s, and he had the choice of either going to a school right next to his village, or walking 2 miles to another public school that actually served a hot meal. Okay? And so he went on to say that his dad actually walked to and from school 2 miles every single day because that school had a hot meal. And so because of that, he went to school, went on to get an education, became a very successful industrialist in India. Then Nitin grows up in India, I think in London as well, and then, has a career in academia, I think at MIT, and then eventually becomes like faculty at Harvard Business School, becoming the dean, right? And it was just an amazing story to me of how something so small in a complex system, which is society and communities and what have you, of the presence of a hot meal, that when you take like a 30, 40-year view on it, led to this amazing outcome for his son, Nitin, to be one of the most accomplished, business and academic professionals in the world, So I think that's a story that we're aware of. I'm sure there's tens of hundreds of thousands of other stories where the mere presence of food actually changes people's life outcomes. And so I got really attached to that. Then when I actually went and visited a kitchen, it also kind of clicked for me to be like, hey, a lot of people have been trying to solve this problem for a long time. It's complicated. And you just cannot hire a bunch of people, have like some unwieldy bureaucracy to go and figure this thing out and cook every meal by hand. What I saw is that these kitchens were all mechanized. I mean, short of having robotics, which is probably the next generation of how they're going to get the meals out. There's some pretty sophisticated food science to get the nutrition in all of these meals. Human hands actually never touch the food. And then there's like a logistics network of 25,000 trucks, powered by GPS that go to and from these schools every day. And to see that entire system be put together and operating just told me that this is something sustainable. This is real. This is going to have long-term impact. And then very recently, what got me even more excited is that this is kind of the Make in India for the World story, right? This organization was started by social entrepreneurs. Everyone celebrates Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk, and but social entrepreneurs do some amazing work too as well. They kind of proved this out at a small scale. They got the government involved. The government continued, but they realized their vision was very big, so they went out to corporates, like your Googles and your Ciscos and Caterpillars of the world. And now individuals like Puneet and me and thousands, hundreds of thousands of others now that are now behind this cause. And not only is it going to change the face of India, but they're taking the same model and applying it to certain parts of the UK, which is very ironic. And I think the roadmap is also to bring it out here into the US, where, despite how wealthy this country is, 350 million population, there's still more than 10% of our population that lives in a very food insecure type of environment. And that needs to change. And I think to solve complex problems like this, you need to have a mix of technology, food science, logistics, and just really good-hearted, smart people addressing the problem head on and doing it for the right reasons.
And thank you for sharing such an amazing story, Mr. Vinod, and thank you for your deep involvement with Akshaya Patra. And it's truly inspiring. And can you please talk about the global presence of Akshaya Patra? For the folks who is not aware of Akshaya Patra, if they're willing to know more about Akshaya Patra, so what kind of a global presence it has today, and what kind of impact it is making, like is it in millions, or what kind of impact at a global scale it is making on the children, and to bring them back to the schools, to not only give the education but also eliminate the hunger problem for them.
Today, I think Akshaya Patra is more of a India phenomenon. I think as one of the gentlemen shared, it's the largest NGO in India. So I think they've been around for about 25 years. What's very interesting is to see like people that were in the program 20 years ago, 15 years ago, like what are they doing now? And we live in a world of probabilities. Just because you have food and you're going to school doesn't guarantee success. It increases the odds of it happening. And so this is something that actually comes from the heart. And trying to track certain things and measuring KPIs and taking kids and putting them into a spreadsheet just doesn't seem like it's part of this cause. Like it's got to be something where you're doing it for the right reasons, and whatever the outcomes are, that's what the outcomes are, right? But I think to get more corporations involved or some very big donors involved, having some sense of measurement around the effectiveness of the system, I think will be important. Doesn't necessarily need to be everybody, but I think enough to generate some stories that people will listen to, that will understand, will really kind of touch their hearts, and more importantly, get them to act, get them to repeat that story within their organization so they can marshal resources, whether it's their expertise or it's cash or capital, what have you, to continue to go and support this organization. So I understand the goal in India to be 5 million kids a day they want to serve. And right now it's like 2.1, 2.2 across more than 70 different kitchens throughout India. That's a very ambitious target. They had a very big celebration earlier this year at the UN where they had crossed 4 billion meals since inception, which is a huge number, right? But I think to get to this next step of 5 million, which is still, I think, only 10% of all the kids in India in the age that, in terms of their addressable market, it's going to be, quite challenging. It's going to need more people, more resources, to really get behind this. Now, I think India itself is kind of a full-time job, for the organization to kind of figure out. But it's great in that, Puneet and I and others were talking about that this organization needs like better marketing, right? Where just more people need to know about the great work that's happening. You can't blame anybody because everybody's so focused on actually helping the children, right? Versus, trying to shout from a megaphone what they're doing. That's part of our job. We have to go and figure that out to be able to support everyone that's doing that work. And I think, from people that are in this industry that are focused on food insecurity, they're kind of in the flow of information. And that's why I think there's a UK presence now. It was really kind of pulled over there versus Akshaya Patra trying to market itself to the UK. And I think that's why people in the US are also hearing about it. And this is like a globally applicable problem. I wouldn't be surprised 25, 30 years from now where you see Akshaya Patra in South America or different parts of Europe or different parts of Africa, because I think this model really works. And, as more capital and resources comes into it, it'll have the legs to really go and expand.
It reminded me the sustainability aspect for Akshaya Patra, and of course you are from tech space, and would you tell us like how the technology is going to play a role in terms of the sustainability of the Akshaya Patra, or even to bring the awareness around the world?
It's a great question because I think technology is a very, very big part of this. Because without technology, you're not going to be able to solve a problem at this scale. At the kitchens that I visited, I saw machines that were like custom made, working with large manufacturers, but making sure like the specs are appropriate for what they're trying to achieve. but machines that could create 40,000 chapatis, cook 40,000 chapatis in 1 hour, right? Gigantic vats of rice being boiled. Essentially like assembly lines and conveyor belts that are kind of putting all of these meals together. And again, human hands never touch this food. So, the safety and the quality of it is at a global standard. I believe people from ConAgra and other food companies globally have come in and really helped add that expertise to the organization. I think the GPS component on the trucks. I think the food science element too as well, to be able to pack nutrition dense meals, like the opposite of ultra processed foods, which I think is plaguing a lot of the Western world, is what they had to get into these meals and do it cost effectively, right? The cost per meal is about 20 cents, which is unheard of in any market. And I think it's really like, while the technology is the core of this, it's really the entire system that really kind of makes the organization work. And I think now, since they've been around for 25 years, every year they seem to be serving more and more kids. They have like the right kind of know-how and track record where it's believable they can get to 5 million, And I've actually, when I did visit the kitchens, I talked to certain staff that were there. They're coming from all different backgrounds. One gentleman was, went to IIT, worked at GE for a number of years. And, he just was like, I have these amazing skills. I have this country that offered me this opportunity to get an amazing education. I want to put it to good use. And, he's one of the tireless workers over there running a kitchen outside of Mangalore, with the whole team that's like equally as dedicated. And I think there's lots more people that are like that, it is our duty and our obligation to go and support.
And another tech question actually. So, of course, Gen AI is the biggest thing right now, and in everywhere we are talking about artificial intelligence and everything. So, how, from Akshaya Patra perspective, how are we planning to bring AI aspects of it, into whether it is upgrading, the organization from the technology standpoint? And again, it goes back to the same question of sustainability and bringing the awareness and probably, upgrading these kitchens and bringing the awareness around that, or bringing the funds to the organization. So in any way possible, how AI is going to play a role, and is there any contribution from the technology perspective in that angle?
There certainly is. I'm not necessarily privy to all those plans, but I'm very curious about them. I think for Gen AI, there's probably an application inside the organization as well as outside. So inside, I think it's like taking the staff that they have. It's already a very lean organization from my understanding, but making them even more productive, right? The memo drafting, the annual plans, the spreadsheets, the numbers, closing your books, all that stuff is probably going to be, you essentially have a co-pilot to do a lot of that work, right? Then in the kitchens themselves, I've seen how mechanized that they are, but there's no robotics there yet. And I think eventually there'll be like a robotic type of automation, similar to probably an Amazon warehouse, or like what Tesla's event the other day about the Optimus robot, right? There'll be some version of these things, I think, that will be present in these kitchens, such that the existing staff there can focus on the things that are uniquely human, and essentially have like leverage to be able to cover more ground, right? So I could see that actually leading to more kitchens being opened, getting them staffed like much faster. And if you really want to think far in the future, like if autonomous driving ever, it seems like it's happening in parts of California and Austin here. This is really far out, but you could see like a lot of the trucking of getting these meals back and forth being autonomous too as well, right? And that can, potentially serve more and more people that are out there. I think on the donor side of things, I think one of the participants here from JP Morgan had mentioned that a lot of donors are, looking to AI to figure out like which organizations that they should back, right? And asking via prompts to things like ChatGPT and otherwise to be like, hey, who's doing interesting work in these particular fields? And so I think it's a big responsibility of this organization to make sure all of its stories, all of its data, all of its history is essentially online and made available to these services, so there's a higher likelihood of discovery, right? There's a lot of times where you just have to put yourself in a position to be lucky, right? I mean, I think we're fortunate to have an amazing group of talented people here. The organization has some great backing from the Indian government, from corporates, from individuals. But if we can put ourselves in a position to get discovered by even more capital and more resources, I think the odds of hitting these goals and even exceeding them to the benefit of not just India but the world becomes a higher likelihood.
Thank you, Mr. Vinod, and thank you for sharing a lot of insights today and bringing awareness around Akshaya Patra and the greater initiative that Akshaya Patra has been taking from more than past 2 decades. Thank you for being with me today, and also being part of Akshaya Patra's annual event. Thank you.